I was a CNA working third shift at an end of life senior care facility in Upper Michigan near Lake Huron. The hours were usually quiet as everybody was in bed or heading there and meals were over. The overnight job entailed lots of cleaning, mopping, dusting, and prepping for breakfast at 8 a.m., as well as answering night calls or being on death watch every 15 minutes. Those were the worst as you knew death was soon. One resident was close, but could linger for days, the doctor said. People said and did the oddest things at those last gasps, too. Needless to say, it was not an easy job, but the pay sucked equally as well. Small town blues for job prospects. Watching other people's family members die is not for the faint of heart. It's the constant reminder of life's worst part and the limited time we've been given. One of my favourite co-workers with a great upbeat attitude, Val and I shared this night shift together. We knew our preferred tasks and set about them happily, chatting to each other in the dining room, getting it ready for breakfast. Val needed to use the one nearby employee toilet for an extended stay, so I proceeded to mop the opposite hallway facing the nurse's station and bathroom where Val was. I mopped backwards, pulling rather than pushing so I don't leave footprints. So naturally, I don't see where the carpet begins and I need to dip my mop to turn my direction until my shoe heel hits the edge. I can mindlessly do this while looking around the hallway. I was in the process of dipping and squishing my mop when a form caught my eye in the hallway arc entrance to the doors leading to both the nurse's station and opposite the bathroom where Val was. I thought it was her returned back to the floor refreshed and unburdened of previous meals. Nope. What I saw gave me great open-mouthed, silent scream pause. Peeking and stretching out across part of the hallway ceiling, maybe 15 feet long, into the main taller hallway where I stood frozen, was a dark human shadow from all smoky and eyeless. It stayed there for maybe 2 or 4 seconds, and then zip, it shot back into the hallway. I stood there scared, silent and immobile as I heard the bathroom door open. Val screamed, then slammed the door again. I heard her call my name through the closed door and slowly crept to the hallway to see nothing there but the doors to the nurse's station, the bathroom, and now the break room across from the utility closet where the cleaning supplies lived. The hallway was clear. I called Val's name from outside the door, knocking too. She asked, "Is it gone?" I responded quietly, "Yes." "What did you see? Because I saw something. Get out here now. Don't leave me alone with that." Val came out and grabbed me in a hug so hard I knew she was scared. She shook, saying that she opened the bathroom door, which should have seen the nurse's station open door and part of the hallway. What she saw blocked the door and most of the wall. It was huge, filled the wall and was smoke black. She didn't see a top or face shape to it, but it blocked her exit like a smoky haze right against the door leaking in. So she slammed the door fast and screamed my name. We worked side by side the rest of our shift, never leaving each other's sight until it was time to leave. The morning shift supervisor wondered why we were both clocked out, then bolted in a huge hurry that day. Val told her about it later in a text message, saying she was taking a day off. Not sure if it was a reaper, but we saw right after we clocked out, a resident died 5 minutes later. When I was 10 or 11, my friend brought out a Ouija board at her house. I didn't want any part of it because I believed in demons, but my friend and sister thought it was funny and asked it how old I'll be when I die. It said 14. Then they asked how, and it said black car. About 3 years later, when I was 14, other friends, ones who hadn't heard about the board and didn't know that friend, started saying they had dreams of me getting into car crashes or being hit while crossing the road. I immediately asked about the car each time, and they always said a black truck or big black dark coloured car. Multiple friends said this, and when I told them about what the board said, they were freaked out. Some will think it was my sister playing an elaborate joke, but this was 3 years after the board, and she's not a prankster, and neither are my friends. At least one would have for sure spilled the beans, because they are bad liars and bad secret keepers. Anyway, they had these dreams for months, and would tell them to me at lunch. Then another friend who was in a separate grade, meaning she didn't eat lunch with us and didn't know about the dreams or the board's prediction, was talking to us when she turned to me and said something like, "Hey, OP, I had a weird dream that I was at the funeral. Your siblings and parents were there, and we're all there, but you weren't. I'm not 100% sure whose funeral it was, but I'm pretty sure it was yours." This happened a few weeks before my 15th birthday, so I was freaked. Not long after my friend's dreams, my mom got a black car, and it made me even more scared. A big black Mercedes. Granted, there are a lot of black Mercedes cars in my town, but it still made me nervous. The weeks leading up to my 15th birthday consisted of me being extra careful crossing the streets and always wearing my seatbelt. I was relieved when my birthday came and passed, but it still haunts me. Okay, so I lived next door to my great-grandfather from 1990, when I was born, until he died in 2006. His wife Doreen had died 3 years prior to my birth, so I never met her, but I'd seen plenty of photos of her and heard stories from other family members. One day when I was about 5 or 6, me and my older brother were playing in my great-granddad's back garden, something we did a lot, when we both looked up to his bedroom window and saw Nana Doreen smiling and waving at us. We both just stood there, shocked, and I don't remember waving back at her or seeing her disappear. I just remember us running into the house and telling our mum, Nan, Grandad and great-granddad what we'd seen. The bedroom she was waving from was the one she died in. She had breast cancer and wanted to stay at home with the family because she didn't have a lot of time left. The weirdest thing though was her colour. The closest I can come to describing it is the colour of the ghosts in Blythe's Spirit, 1945. A sort of greenish colour. I only saw that movie years later and I immediately thought of my encounter. I've had other experiences and heard a lot of creepy stories from family throughout the years, but that was the one that stands out in my life. This encounter happened over 20 years ago, and lately it's been heavy on my mind. I feel like if I told anyone I know in real life, they would think I'm crazy or just brush it off as a dream. It's been bugging me, and I just needed to talk about it with someone. When I was 6, my mom, aunt, and I went to a jewellery market in Little Saigon, a heavily populated Vietnamese area of Southern California. My mom and aunt were on the hunt for bargain jewellery for my aunt's upcoming wedding, and this was the place to get it. The jewellery market we were at was a huge warehouse, probably used for something else before, manufacturing or whatnot. But now, it was filled with rows of glass jewellery cases. Each jewellery case was manned by 1 or 2 Vietnamese people selling their selection of goods. This place wasn't fancy at all, very casual with most of the vendors in t-shirts and shorts. This is semi-important. As my mum and aunt went from the case to case, I did my usual hover kid thing where I just wandered and looked at things but stayed close to them. We reached the end of one row, toward the backside of the warehouse, and I don't know how, but I suddenly lost sight of them. I did a quick scan knowing they wouldn't be far, and at the back of the warehouse I saw a room. It reminded me of my uncle's warehouse office that juts out onto the floor, and I'm pretty sure that was this room used to be. This is when things get strange. The room had a window that looked out towards the warehouse floor, but it was covered with a curtain. The doorway was covered in crystal-like beads. You know, like the ones that drape down the doorway. And there was this glow, a super warm reddish-orange glow emitting from it. I figured my mom and aunt went in there, so I decided to look. I felt really weird walking through the beads, but when I entered the room, The warm glow just hit me with like this energy, like a buzzing warm energy. And then I hear a man's voice say, "Hello, Elisa." Inside this room, there were glass jewelry cases lining the walls and a tiny island case in the middle. Standing there were three tall Indian people, hands formally folded in front of them. They stood triangulated to one another, looking at me with an endearing expression, and it felt like they loved me. Two of them were men in sharp suits with slick hair standing at the forefront. The other was a woman standing behind them in an elegant, gorgeous, deep blue dress with long, beautiful hair. They looked way too dressed up for this place. It was so odd seeing these jewelry salesmen standing in such close quarters, in such elegant attire. "It's so good to see you," the same man who spoke before said. To this day, his face is still clear to me. The other two have faded in my memory. I'll never forget the way he looked at me. He seemed genuinely happy to see me. He even looked like he might cry. Now, 6-year-old me was a bit confused. How did they know my name? What the heck are these people doing selling jewelry in a place like this? Anyway, my mum was obviously not here, and their incessant smiling and staring started to freak me out. So I said a polite, meek hello, while slowly inching toward the side door exit. All the while, they were watching me and smiling. I went through the beaded curtain of the side doorway and back out onto the warehouse floor. I immediately spotted my mom and aunt at the end of one of the rows, looking into a jewelry case. I went over to them and tugged at my mom's shirt. "Mom, who are those people?" It took me a few attempts to get her attention. Woman is serious about her shopping. When I finally got her attention, I repeated, "Who are those people?" "Who?" "The people back there." I turned and pointed to the room, but when I looked back, the whole room was dark. Bead curtains and curtain over the window were gone. It was just black and empty. My mum just shook her head, "Not now," and continued perusing the case. I stared at the room and thought they must have closed shop, but not even a minute had gone by. I remember thinking, dang, they cleaned up quick. I patiently waited until my mom and aunt were done shopping so I could ask them about the three strangers. The explanation I came up with until then was that mom and aunt had passed through the room before me, and maybe in conversation they had told the strangers my name before I got there. Finally, they were done shopping, and being mild-mannered, ever-patient kid that I was, I waited until we were back in my mom's van, strapping in our seatbelts to ask again. "Mom, who were those people?" "What people?" "Those people who knew my name, in the room in the back." My mom and aunt turned to face me and had this bewildered look on their faces. "Elisa, what people are you talking about?" I tried describing the room. Surely they would remember this particular shop that stuck out like a sore frickin' thumb from the others. Nope. Now I was increasingly getting frustrated because I thought they were messing with me and I just wanted them to fess up to it. "The people in the room. They knew my name. Do you know them?" I remember my mom and aunt were looking back at me in the car and then just slowly turning their heads to non-verbally say to each other, "What the fuck?" That whole exchange made me begin to think, maybe this wasn't a prank of their doing after all. Finally, my mom huffed with a nervous laughter, "Elisa, I have no idea what you're talking about." So I let it go. On the ride home, I just chalked it up to being a pretty cool magic trick. I loved watching street magicians on TV, and it reminded me of the tricks where the magician figures out the name of the person and writes it on a card or something. That thought actually made me pretty giddy on the ride home. I thought it was cool I got to experience a magic trick. I have a pretty unique name, so colour me impressed, jewellery salesman. That was the first and last time I ever saw those people. I don't really think about this encounter until recent years. I had a dream that reminded me of it, and now I can't stop thinking about it. Looking back, I think it was more than a simple street magic trick. Like, something more paranormal was at work. So right now I'm on vacation with my dad and his wife in the Austrian Alps. It's beautiful here. in a small hut on the side of a mountain, really far out. And after a long day of running around in Innsbruck, I was browsing Reddit till exactly 0:43 a.m. when we had a blackout. The lights flickered and went out, and then my phone stopped charging. Naturally, I thought it was late and I couldn't be bothered to investigate, so I went to sleep. Though, not 2 minutes later, I hear steps outside the door on the gravel road. This stuff creeps me out, so I just put my wallet, my phone, and a little knife I keep around for utility next to me in bed. Anyways, the steps came closer. Well, that was the illusion. And I even heard them right next to my window once. They were parallel to the others, so they were coming from a different source. Anyways, they didn't stop or change, so I started to evaluate, and 4 ways came to mind. It was the goats pulling grass outside of the field right outside the door. It was a wild animal lurking around the house for some reason. It was the farmer of the cows. Yes, there was a cow shed beneath our vacation apartment, being worried for his livestock because they need electricity, I guess. Or obviously, anything paranormal. Though number 4 sounds the coolest, I'd really like it not to be the answer, because as I said, I hate stuff like this. Update while writing. Now my dad has gone to the bathroom and it scared the shit out of me. Holy shit, now the dog started barking as shit. My parents are still kind of asleep, so I can't really investigate, but in conclusion, now I think it's a mix between 1 and 2. I think I heard some animal noises outside before. No hissing or stuff, but something close to barking. Are there wolves here? Anyways, I will try to sleep now. My dad also reassured me that it's probably the goats and it's fine. I can't sleep. And anything else happens, I'll try to keep you updated. I never considered myself a spiritual person until this past week. What I'm about to write is true, and the events did indeed happen. I cannot make any of this up. This involves my mom and my girlfriend of 11 months, who are both very spiritual people close to God. My girlfriend, we'll call her Jay for now, had a near-death experience once and currently has a substance abuse problem. Both of these women have contributed to one of the most scary, confusing, and mind-bending weeks of my life. For years now, my mom has always been a very spiritual person. She always went to church, read her Bible, refrained from watching horror movies, played her gospel songs. She strongly believed a family member of ours had roots on her, voodoo, black magic, etc. This belief went on for years, destroying the relationship with my cousins who I was close with, since their mom was the prime suspect of my mom's accusations of witchcraft. I always would hear my mom chase these ghosts away from her house, telling them to get out, and would constantly be in her head. Things would get worse, and eventually we moved from New York City to South Carolina since my dad's job moved down there. We figured a change of scenery would help her, but we soon realized that sometimes it's not the house that's haunted, but it's the people. My oldest sister and her kids and husband all came down to Myrtle Beach for the 4th of July weekend. We had a blast and everyone was taken care of. The vacation ended and it was time for our lives to go back to normal. The Saturday after, I hear my mom talking to herself. She does this frequently and I'm sort of used to it. But this time, it sounded like she was having a conversation. Usually she chases the ghosts away or prays or sings her gospel song. But this was as if she was having a conversation with someone. I ignored it since I was getting used to it. Days passed and I spent time with Jay. She's been getting off of substances, so she's homebound and eating and sleeping a lot. She got into trouble recently and her car is currently at a trap house. So I have to drive 30 minutes to her home to spend time with her and buy her food and hang out. One night I was coming home, I think it was Tuesday, and my siblings were texting me in a group chat, "What's the surprise?" I didn't know of any surprise, but they claimed Mom had been calling them all week laughing, saying she had a surprise for them, and how they need to book their flights ASAP to come down, and to not worry about the tickets because they will be paid back. and how my sister will have to sell her car because she will get a new one. We were all wondering what the surprise was. The next day, I asked Dad if he knew anything of this surprise. Dad said he doesn't know anything. My sister already knew what this was when she heard that. She was having another attack. Me and Dad came home from work and had a talk with Mom. I recorded her response so I can share it with my siblings, and I have a link to the dry file if anyone is interested. I've never been scared and worried and sad at the same time, but my mom's response invoked all of those emotions. She said she had defeated them, and her reward will be given to her. Money, cars, riches. If we go back to last year, August, when I first started seeing Jay, the first night I came home around 1 after midnight, Mom was waiting for me in the hallways, scared. She asked where I was, and she was freaking out. I figured she would be mad since she would think I was out partying with someone, so I told her I was by myself. That made it even worse. She explained to me later that week that there's things trying to get in contact with her, and how they torment her and want her to feed them and house them. She was also worried about me specifically because they told her that he's my friend now, and how they would steal me from her. So she was worried those things went in my head and pulled me out of the house. But I told her, no, Mom, I was with a friend. She asked if I was sure. I said yes, I was with a girl. She says okay. Then life went on. So fast forward to the present, my mom says she's defeated these beings and her reward will be coming. My siblings and I were seriously thinking about schizophrenia or some sort of psychosis. That night was a nightmare. I laid frozen in bed, had panic attacks, heard voices, even had a sleep paralysis attack. I heard Mom waking up frequently at night, opening the garage door and guest bedroom doors, and turning the hallway lights on and off. Then she would go to bed, and she would wake up and do it again. I lay frozen from fear in bed. That morning, I asked her, "What was that all about, Mom?" She says, "Oh, that. They were here last night." I asked her who, and she said, "Them." I asked, "Well, where are they?" She said that they were hiding from me and Dad to surprise us. I told her they weren't real. She said they are, hearing what I'm saying for. They're in a room with us. I asked her how come I can't hear them. She said, "Well, you can't hear them if you're the one they're talking to." The day went on as it should, and I called her from work, checking up on her, and she seemed fine. When I came home, she said her stomach hurts, and I gave her 2 pills to calm her down since I figured she was stressed. I later found out she didn't take them. I went to see Jay and I told her the story. I told her how Mom said that she's afraid to go outside because they said they will get her. Jay said, "How is that any different than you?" That hit me hard because I do consider myself a homebody and I do not like to go outside. But can it be for the same reasons my mom doesn't want to? How are my fears any different? I spent some time then rushed home because I did not want to stay out too late. That night was normal. That was Thursday night. Friday came and it was mostly normal up until around 4:30ish at work. I was loading up the UPS truck, and when we finished, I saw this weird man approaching. I didn't see which car he came in, or if he came in a car at all. Dark-skinned, eyes were yellow, missing teeth. Really looked off. He held a black string in his hand, and his eyes kept looking at the factory I worked in, as if he was scouting the place out. He asked me if I knew any places for car parts, since all the places close at 4:30. I say nah. This is a bike factory. Try looking across the street. He looked one more time at the factory and was playing with the string in his hand and said, "Okay." He walked away. He had a huge knot on the back of his neck. He really did not seem right. Later that day, it's Friday night. Mom seemed okay, and I went over to Jay. We were driving, and I always have Spotify playing in my car. I forgot the exact song that we're playing, but a Green Day song played, and Jay said to skip it, and I did. The next song was Guggenheim Wax Museum by the experimental band Have a Nice Life. I liked that song and waited for it to start playing, but it never did. It was silent for half a minute. I decided to restart it and still nothing. However, I skipped and the next song played perfectly fine. So I skipped back and all of a sudden, Spotify froze. And when it came back on, I Thought About Killing You by Kanye started playing. Out of nowhere. I didn't add it to the queue. I didn't add it to the playlist. Spotify did not restart and refresh the queue, since the song that played before and after were the same before it froze. It's as if that song popped in and out of existence out of nowhere. And the lyrics said, "Today I seriously thought about killing you. Premeditated murder." I thought to myself, is this a sign? Who's trying to kill me? Was that a coincidence? Then I remembered earlier that day when that weird man approached me. And if that was the murder attempt on me? The night went normal and I came home, then woke up Saturday morning. Dad went to work and I stayed home with Mom. And she was pacing the house back and forth, slamming doors, talking to herself, whisper shouting, opening the garbage can. I was getting annoyed at this point. She called my dad at work, panicking and telling him to throw away his lunch bag in the garbage ASAP. Dad ignored it, of course. My siblings called throughout the day to check up on her, and she said everything's fine. Then I took a nap and went to pick up Dad from work. Before I went, I decided to check the garbage bin. I had seen that she'd thrown away some of her clothes towel, a whole watermelon, honeydew, fresh apples, pineapple, Pop-Tarts, all fresh. Nothing wrong with them, and she just threw them away. I was pissed. I went to pick Dad up, and when we came home, I showed him, and he was pissed as well. We had to talk to her, and told her we was taking her to the doctors right now. She agreed to go. Doctors care had told us they couldn't help us, and how we need to go to the emergency room. She didn't want to go, and said that she promised she will stop. After some convincing, we decided to take her home, and I stopped by Walmart to get her some over-the-counter stress and anxiety meds. We got home, and she took 2 of them, and I rested. I went to pick Jay, and she was going to be spending the night with me. First, we went to her friend's house by the beach. I was told her friend has similar psychotic episodes and usually takes trazodone. So she gave us her entire bottle of prescriptions, and I thanked her. Me and Jay come home, and she was super clingy. I'm not sure if it was because she's finally sober, or if she needs me to get her car back. But she was extremely clingy. She was always possessive and overattached, but this was even stronger. The next part is very disturbing. So weeks back, we both grew worried since her missed a period. But this is normal for her. She had PCOS, which causes irregular periods. Also, the drugs could be involved. But earlier in the week, she said that she had her period finally. So that Saturday, she called me in the bathroom to see something and said, "Look." I looked in the toilet bowl and see a small bean-shaped object with strings and all. She says, "That's the embryo." I was so confused. She then explained to me the reason why she quit using drugs was because she was 2 weeks pregnant and informed by the doctors, and she had a miscarriage, which was why she was at home eating and sleeping all day. And it's just now that the embryo finally came out. I was confused. Whether I was the father or not, I had no idea. But it's weird my mom starts acting up at the same time out of nowhere. We were at the swimming pool at my neighborhood clubhouse, and she started talking about having a baby and her wanting me to impregnate her. I'm like, what's gone into you? She was hugging me and saying, "Come on, don't you want a baby?" I said no. I think I'm too young, honestly. I'm 22 and she's 32. And I still can't wrap my head around the fact that I just saw a potential son of mine die. And she keeps insisting, whispering in my ear, how she will steal from me and now I'm hers. There was another family at the pool, and there was a cute little one there. And she's like, "Oh, look at that. Don't you want that?" I said, "I do, but not now." Then she started acting very seductive, but I made sure not to give in to temptation and not to impregnate her. Sunday morning, Jay has been eating and drinking non-stop. Symptoms of withdrawal or miscarriage, I'm assuming. My siblings texted me to go with my mom to church and asked the pastor himself to pray. for us and see if we can get him to pray for the house. I went with them and Jay stayed home watching Netflix and eating and sleeping until we came back. At the end of church, the pastor prayed for us and didn't have any anointing oil. He was also going to be out of town this week. He touched my hand while praying. I was always a little skeptic and agnostic, but I did this for my mom and her peace of mind. We came home and everything was fine. Me and Jay went to the pool again and came back. Then we sat outside and she smoked a cigarette. My mom came out and they were talking. My mom asked her if she was doing good now, in terms of being sober. She said yeah, she's been feeling much better and now she's been eating a lot. My mom's like, oh really? I figured she'd think that Jay was just one of them, since they constantly want to be fed and housed. Parallels make so much sense. It was getting late, so I decided to drop Jay back home. We stopped by her mom's house and then went to her house. It was raining and her house was a mess, as always. Throughout the ride, she was pouring herself out to me, and she said that she was sad because she was miss me and she loves me dearly. I felt so bad for leaving her in this condition. I put the TV on for her, helped take the garbage out, and made sure she was comfortable. It was not a nice place to live in the terms of condition. We heard knocks on the window, and she believes she's been watched, as well as and there's people that will be disturbing her. I told her I will circle around her house before I leave. She says no point. They are trained to do this. You won't see them. She usually hallucinates stuff when she's under the influence, but I'm just glad she's sober. I said goodbye and circled the house. I saw no one. My heart felt so bad to leave her there by herself, and the rain made it worse. I drive home, I'm about to turn right, and my car hydroplaned, and I overcorrected and ran headfirst into a car waiting at the light to turn left. I gave up at that point. My car was still drivable, but the person's car I hit had to be towed. The guilt killed me. My lights won't work and the hood won't open, so I can't use the car. I went home and my mom consoled me and told me she understands. She also told me to stay away from Jay. I told her she wasn't even in the car with me. My dad insisted the same thing too. I don't know what's going on, but I flashed back to Friday evening when my car started playing I Thought About Killing You randomly. My side of the car got hit, but I was wondering if the pastor's touch and prayer familiar protected me. So here I am, sitting on my self-requested day off, cars at the body shop, after hitch rides with co-workers, and my co-worker's mom still pacing the house whisper shouting. Hitting the air with a broom and bouncing a ball up and down, I give up. And the more I think of the last week, the more confused I get. So much to unpack and I'm feeling really down. Can someone help me to understand what is going on here? Is this a string of bad luck and coincidences? Or is there something more sinister going on?